Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 123 of the podcast. This episode is going to be a little unique. In fact, a couple more episodes that are coming will be just like it. And it's unique in that it's not me interviewing another person. Instead, it's a group of people having a conversation about a few different topics within an area of ministry. So this is a recording of a tribe conversation that we had with some preschool ministry leaders. And we use the phrase tribe conversation to mean, what tribe are you in terms of your role in your ministry? Are you in preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, or maybe your children's ministry overall or student pastor overall? And so we have organized some of these tribe conversations recently, and we had a few just in the past week or two about preschool ministry, elementary ministry, and student ministry. And, there's 80 or so people that sign up to be part of these live, and you can submit questions, and we have a panel of about 6 to 8 people who are part of the conversation, and then other people are participating via chat and Q&A and asking questions and interacting that way. And so some of you may have heard this because maybe you're on one of those live, but most of you have not. So what you're going to hear today is the tribe conversation with preschool leaders. And in that call, we talked about volunteer scheduling. We talked about how you schedule volunteers. What systems do you use? Do you use your church management system? Do you use something else? How often do volunteers serve? Is it weekly, every other week? How do you manage that? And we also talked about curriculum, editing curriculum, distributing curriculum. Again, what are the different things these leaders do? So it's very practical, very hands-on. As you listen, you'll certainly get some ideas you can use in your church. And as I said, today is about preschool ministry, though some of the volunteer scheduling and the curriculum stuff applies really to children's ministry overall or elementary ministry as well. So if you serve in that role, you'll probably love this conversation. Now, if you do serve in preschool ministry, or maybe you're a children's pastor who also leads preschool ministry, if you're listening to this when it comes out this week, you might be interested in signing up for the Redefining Preschool Ministry course with Ministry Boost. It launches this week, but you can still sign up if you'd like to. You can do that at ministryboost.org. Just go ahead and click on the Redefining Preschool Ministry course. But this will be the last week you could do that. However, you lead coaching, which is something that we're doing as a part of Ministry Boost in partnership with Orange and You Lead. There are coaching groups for children's ministry that are starting next month. I'll be leading one, and Erin English will be leading another one along with Jim Weidman. And registration for that's still open. If you're interested, you can sign up through October 31st at ylcoaching.com. But let's go ahead now and listen in on this tribe conversation with preschool ministry leaders.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this preschool ministry tribe conversation. Very excited about today's conversation. We've got some amazing preschool ministry leaders who are on the panel today, and many people that are watching the call. And so we hope to actually have a couple topics that we want to kind of explore and talk about. And so we'll maybe begin doing a few introductions and get to know each other just a little bit. My name is Conley. I'm actually the next generation pastor at Mission Community Church in Gilbert, Arizona. I'm helping host this preschool call because for the last 12, 13 months, I've been leading in a very hands-on capacity in our preschool ministry. And after 20 years of ministry, it's been very eye-opening. It's been a ministry that I've always led from a very high level, but being in the weeds, it's been challenging and fun and rewarding. And I've had some really great friends who have helped me, encouraged me along the way. And so, but that's me. Let's do some introductions. Just if you guys, as on the panel here, want to just kind of introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and what you do, and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into conversation here a little bit. So somebody kick it off and introduce yourself.
I'm Nick Blevins from Community Christian Church in Nottingham, Maryland.
That was short and sweet. I'm Erin English. I'm the Early Childhood Kids Ministry Director at Westside Family Church in Kansas City.
I'm Kelly Stockdale, and I'm at Gracefield Church in a suburb outside of Memphis in Collierville, and I'm the Next Gen Director.
I'm Jennifer Edwards. I'm the Children's Ministry Director at Northwood Church in Summerville, South Carolina.
Hey, I'm Jackie Euler, and I'm Early Childhood Groups Director outside of Atlanta in Suwannee, Sugar Hill area for Gwinnett Church.
I am Sarah Richards, and I am the pastor of Next Generation at Church of the Open Door in Maple Grove, Minnesota.
Hey, I'm Cass Brannon, and I am the children's pastor at First Baptist Church Alpharetta in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Hi, I'm Emily Jones. I am the preschool director at 12 Stone Church outside of Atlanta.
Awesome. Was that everybody? Okay, just making sure. I glanced at my phone for a few minutes and lost track. I am very one-tracked and everything. Well, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to have a fun conversation just about some different things that we often get as questions, or I often get as questions around the area of preschool. And so I guess we kind of want to kick it off and maybe start talking first about curriculum prep. And it really doesn't matter what curriculum you use, but how is it that you process and put together your curriculum, whether it's something that you assembled together from scratch or whether it's you use a curriculum that you purchase and edit. I know that's always a kind of a complicated thing. I know from 20 years in children's ministry, many of us in this role, we are very passionate about the curriculum. And so oftentimes we have this temptation to spend a lot of time on the curriculum, and maybe more so than we should at the cost of relationships or other things. And so I want to talk just a little bit about what is your process? What does your weekly process look like or monthly process look like for gathering, putting together, processing, and then even a little bit we'll talk about maybe distributing curriculum as well. So anyone want to kick that off on what that looks like? And I know Erin and you and I have had lots of conversations about curriculum. I don't know if you're at a place where you can talk about some things that you guys are shifting in. I can talk about things that we've done in our area as well. So somebody kick it off. Tell me a little bit about that.
Kenny, can I jump in first real quick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just want to remind people, if you're, as you're listening and watching in the chat, so if you click at the bottom and open up the chat, you can ask questions in there. There's also a Q&A where you can ask questions. That's probably the best place to put questions because then we won't miss them. In the chat, though, as we get started, it'd be great for you to share who you are, where you're from, what's your role at your church. But as you do that, be sure to choose all panelists and attendees. There's a little to button there. Make sure you pick that so everybody sees what you share. So go ahead, Erin.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Nick. I forgot about that. Yeah, go ahead and tell us where you're from, and that'd be great so we get the conversation going. So tell me about curriculum. What does curriculum look like in your preschool ministry? Somebody.
I will go first because Kenny and I have talked a lot about curriculum, and I can see that my curriculum resource coordinator is actually on the call. So hi, Donna. So we have a curriculum coordinator, and we're actually transitioning this a little bit where we have so we've used Orange, and I love Orange. And we have taken a break for the last 5 weeks, and we'll continue to take a break from Orange for the next 25 weeks. To our entire church is going in the same direction. We're doing the Believe series, which is written by Randy Frazee, who also wrote the story. So from birth through adulthood, we're all doing Believe right now. So where it comes with curriculum, it doesn't necessarily fit our structure as far as relationships in the gospel, small group, large group. So we have had to spend a lot of time reworking the curriculum that we got from that in order to fit in our strategy and structure of building relationships in small group. What has been interesting, it's made me really appreciate Orange even more. We're spending a lot of time kind of, what I love about Orange is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What we get is really good, and we can take it and pick and choose and run with it. We do have a curriculum coordinator who takes kind of what the curriculum, a resource coordinator who takes what the curriculum coordinator has picked out and then works really hard with a team of volunteers who will come in and prep and pull and set up classrooms and different things. So that's kind of how we do curriculum.
Yeah, when I got here to Mission, this was the first church I've ever had that had a resource coordinator. And I think our resource coordinator, I think we pay her maybe somewhere between 5 to 10 hours a week. But she does all the shopping and does all the assembly. She has a team of volunteers, about 8 or 9 volunteers. That they show up 1 or 2 days a week, and they put together all the bins from preschool through elementary. And it's the most amazing 5 to 10 hours I've ever paid anyone to do. At Gateway is our directors. Like it literally tanked our directors to have to go shopping and do those things, which really ultimately it's something they could have empowered volunteers to do and such. But to have this person who we have a resource room where all the supplies are, and easy to pull those things and ship those things, and they'll reach out to us in the middle of the week. So like, hey, the curriculum calls for, ping pong balls, but we actually have a lot of tennis balls. Can we make that switch? And it's just great to have somebody who owns that, who runs with that and makes sure that's all ready. So that's a huge benefit for us. What about you guys?
Yeah, we also have a gal who edits our curriculum. We actually use True from David C. Cook. And she actually edits our curriculum for early childhood and elementary, and then our 4th and 5th grade room. And then she hands it off to another gal that we have that's part-time, and she gathers all the stuff, gathers all the curriculum or the supplies that we need, and then puts it in the rooms for us, for the leaders. And then, she gets everything. She doesn't do all the buying, but most of the buying, and gets everything. She's amazing. Those people are amazing to be able to have.
I can go. We have a kind of a central services team here at our church. And one of the people on that central services team, her whole job is to gather curriculum, to kind of make it to where it's a ability for us, for our campuses. We tweak it a little bit. She buys the supplies. And then we have a team of volunteers that are in our preschool ministry. And then also some people that, maybe are retired and that don't want to serve with kids, but it's a really good opportunity for them to come in and do something that's not as strenuous. And they stock bins at the first of the month, and then we put them out in the rooms. And it's worked really well for us. It's one of the most gratifying feelings to not have to worry about curriculum in the middle of the week, and have a team that's already putting it together and people that enjoy it, because I don't enjoy it. So that's kind of how we do it.
So we're at a little bit of a smaller church, and so we don't have the ability to hire a curriculum coordinator. And so I help some to edit the curriculum, as does our family ministry assistant. And then she does all of the buying, which, let's be honest, it's really Amazon Prime. There's no going out and shopping anymore. Hallelujah. But we have a team of volunteers, though, who come in and handle all of the prep of that curriculum.
I would be interested for those of you that do have curriculum coordinators or a person who's designated to kind of pick and choose in what you do with your curriculum. How much time do they spend a week doing that?
I think for us, and it's really the preschool kind of assistant and director that kind of work that together. And I don't know if it's necessarily a time they spend during the week, because I think they are so many weeks ahead that they spend a chunk of a time on a certain day or 2 days editing it and going through it all. And then they're almost freed up the rest of the month versus every single week planning for and spending a chunk of time every single week. So for us, they prepare way in advance and get things together. So they'll have a couple of days that are just absolutely full, but then the rest of the month, they have a lot of other free time to get ready for a lot of other things.
That's really similar at how it looks for us. I have a children's ministry assistant, and she is like 2 months. She does 2 months at a time. She's 2 months ahead. And then she passes off the edited, chosen curriculum to our coordinator. And our coordinator takes it and divides it up and bins it up and puts everything in there. And so when we go into our resource space, there's 1 month on shelves and then another month on shelves. So it takes them a few days, like Cass was saying, of back-to-back days of work. But then it's kind of, not that they're not working during the rest of the time, but a little bit less.
So what's the average for you guys of how far out you guys usually are curriculum-wise? I heard a couple of people maybe got 1 month in bins and then another month on shelves. What's been the average of how far out you guys are with curriculum?
We try to stay about a month out. We have curriculum bins that are just for supplies. So the month before, we'll just go through all of our supply lists and order all the supplies. So that might happen a couple months ahead of time. But as far as actual printing, copying, all that kind of stuff, the actual prep of the specific bins, it's about a month out, and then we'll shelve those too. But when our team comes in to prep those, the curriculum supplies have already been purchased, and they're separated by week and month, so October week 2, they pull that, and then they fill all their bins that way.
That's great. I'd actually be really curious to find out who. I know there are several churches that I've met in the past that have done this and have this in action or whatever, but who has actually a team of volunteers that actually do the curriculum editing for you? Because I know at most churches, it's the director, it's the pastor or whatever kind of owns that, maybe because it's their responsibility or there's not a team of volunteers. But who has actually seen that where you've actually been able to hand off preschool or maybe elementary or whatever it may be to a team of volunteers? Maybe people, stay-at-home moms who used to be teachers or educators who are actually qualified to do this, probably more so than many of us, and have seen success in that, of actually handing that curriculum editing part off to volunteers. Anyone doing that in your church or ministry?
Well, I can say this. We aren't currently doing that, but we used to. We used to actually have a team of volunteers who wrote our curriculum. When I first started here 8 years ago, we had a year of curriculum written by volunteers. The problem came into the biggest problem we had was that some of those volunteers weren't actually volunteers who were in the rooms with us on Sunday. So they were writing this curriculum, but they weren't actually the ones teaching it. And so there was a disconnect there because they weren't able to experience like how it worked and see it in action to see like, oh, that didn't work. So that the next time they wrote a new lesson, they could adjust. And so it was tricky. So I think that's important. If you're going to have volunteers who are editing and writing, like, they need to be able to be in the rooms and seeing how the curriculum is actually playing out and actually working or not working.
That's good. Anyone else? Who does the curriculum edit? Because I'm assuming that most people here purchase a curriculum, it sounds like from the conversation here. Who's the person on your staff or your team who does the edits, who gets the curriculum? They pick which activities your volunteers are doing and such. Who does that on your team, and about how much time do they spend actually doing that?
I'll speak. For me, so I'm a children's pastor. I have a children's assistant that does elementary stuff, and then we have a preschool director with a preschool assistant. It's actually both of the assistants do the editing of all of the curriculum, and so they're really good about knowing. And they probably spend, I would say, anywhere between 4 and 5, 6 hours for a whole month to get it all ready. But they're really good about editing it and knowing, hey, this curriculum would work, or this activity would work inside of our classroom or wherever it might be. They know if we have ping pong balls or cotton balls or all of those different things. So they're the ones that can edit it all down and make it fit in our situation. Or even for us, like we have a Wednesday night program as well. And so especially for our preschoolers, they'll save the messy stuff for Wednesday night, the painting, all of that stuff, because they're not dressed as nice, and all of the reasons that the parents hate it when we send home wet paint stuff on Sunday mornings. So we do it all on Wednesday nights and just make it a little more fun and exciting.
That's good. I know when I took over preschool, we use My First Look with Orange, and I think it takes me, when I first took over, I took it over all of it. So, because a staff member was doing it, I've handed it off since now, but it took me I think I got down to about 2.5 hours, and I could edit an entire month's worth of preschool curriculum, 2-year-old curriculum, and then large group curriculum for preschool. It took about 2.5 hours. And so it wasn't bad to be able to get a month's worth of curriculum done that way. And now we're just trying to put together a team of volunteers that could actually do that as well. A couple people have asked questions too. And one person, Christina Clark, asked this of how are you storing curriculum when you're preparing monthly? She said, we have bins that we use weekly, and we purchase 6 to 8 weeks out, but are you continuously swapping out bins? So how do you guys do that when you're staying ahead? Do you have like storage for 2 months worth of curriculum, or how does logistically, how does that work for you guys?
So for us, we have our bins that actually go in the classrooms each week. Those are prepped monthly by week. So we have like a shelf that has, here's toddlers room, blah, 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 with all their supplies in it for every week of that month. And then we have separate, bigger bins where that are divided just by week, but it's everybody, all age groups for our preschool environment in one big bin. And that's where we put all of our pre-ordered supplies. So when they're going to prep the weekly bins that are out by specific rooms, they pull the big bin that has all of the supplies for everybody in there, then they can divvy out. And of course, that's just the ordered supplies, not all the stuff that's already in the resource room. But then we have it, week 1 bin, week 2 bin, and they're just kind of shallow, so they don't take up a ton of room. And then that's when we add in the copies, all of that stuff.
That's cool. Anyone else have a different system?
We print all of our stuff and order all of our stuff a month ahead and have that sitting in a specific area. But for us, it's just worked better to do the curriculum weekly, to put it actually together in the bins, partly because we're not a huge church with a huge budget. So we can't, I can't have 50,000 ping pong balls. And if it starts to call for it, every week, it can get really confusing about what's been done, or if I've got to take from this week to put it in another week. And so because our volunteers only come one day a week, it's just worked better for us to do it on Wednesday. Our team comes and they prep all that stuff, and they do it weekly.
Yeah, we don't use bins to put our supplies in. We actually share space with a school during the week. So our classrooms are elementary school during the week. So we have carts in each room that we wheel in each week. And so our gal during the week comes in and stocks the cart with everything that the leaders need, just because we share space and we can't go in the rooms during the week to set everything up. So we do it week by week too. The curriculum is written and edited a week or a month out ahead of time, but actual supplies are done the week right before Sunday because of having to share space.
We also share space, but we have a office inside the preschool that we share because it's our church's preschool and us. And so we have a space in there. So that's where we have our bins. And then our curriculum coordinator just comes in on Sunday and she puts each bin in each classroom. And we kind of do it a lot like Jackie was saying, where all the stuff is in one container and it's just loaded into the room. And then they bring it back and we reset it for the next week.
That's good. That's really helpful. So moving on to a follow-up question for this. How do you guys distribute the curriculum? Do you guys send it out via email? Do you have a website? Do you use Planning Center? What's worked well for you to share curriculum with your volunteers on a weekly basis so that way they have the resources to watch or to view or to read before coming in on Sunday?
We have, I've always loved the Go Weekly mail merge that they put together that we can send to leaders, and we will attach our lesson that way. The problem that we have found in the last, or we've noticed maybe in the last 6 months, is that email isn't super effective as far as really getting in front of leaders. So we created on our church website a leader blog where we post encouragements and different, or stories or different things, but also we post our lessons a month at a time. And I know Kenny does this too. It's actually where I got the idea. So, but they can go to that anytime for encouragement, but also our lessons. And then we will, we use CCB. So within CCB, we use Twext to send that link out once a week to just get it in front of their leaders where they can look at the lesson on their phone. We also use the Lead Small app. So we post our lessons there too. The leaders can go at any time and look at the lesson a week in advance.
Who else? What else do you guys do?
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned it if you were on the previous tribe call, but we started doing just really simple videos with our, just selfie videos from our laptop or from our phone. And I'll just go through the curriculum with them, show them examples. Hey, this is what this is going to look like. You may want to watch, there's water in this activity or whatever. Just kind of walk them through it. Try to keep it 4 minutes or less. It's a little more time consuming for me because I have to go through, I make it individual. The twos get one, the threes get one, the pre-K get some, but it's been a lot more effective for our teen volunteers, which we rely on heavily. So we can text that link and we found that they're much more willing to watch a video than to read something. And then I've also seen our adult leaders, because our emails just get flooded, when I can text out that link and just say, hey, here's what's going on, they'll watch it. But then we also send our weekly email with the curriculum attached in hard copy form too, and then push out through Lead Small as well. So we kind of try to hit every forum and hope to catch them all in the big net.
I love the video idea. I'm going to try that. That would be more engaging for me.
Yeah, when we were about a year ago, when we were onboarding a ton of new preschool volunteers, and there's this concern that everybody wasn't getting, and how to really incorporate the bottom line into every activity and how to incorporate, all those things that I did for probably about a month and a half. I would sit at my kitchen table and I'd have the whole bin of the curriculum. And I just kind of do, like you said, a 3 or 4 minute, quick video. And I would, after only having looked at the curriculum for about 10 minutes and say, hey, this is imagine I'm you on Sunday, and here's how I'm going to tie it and we probably got 30, 40 watches and I would do it like on Saturday afternoon. So because most of these people they're not looking at it until Saturday night or Sunday morning, but it was helpful. I knew a lot of families, they would watch it. They'd have it playing in the car on the way to church so that they could listen to it one more time before going over. And I think it doesn't take that long. It literally just sits down, open up your bin and just kind of go through it. It takes about 4 minutes, but I think that's actually really helpful. And I really believe that leveraging text messaging is the key as much as possible, because people are reading their text. It's something like 97% of all texts are read. And so if we can distribute the curriculum via text with links or sending them to a website where they can download the lessons, I think it's kind of like, I remember when I first got to ministry 20 years ago, we were still mailing out curriculum. So we had, big envelopes that we'd stick a month's worth of curriculum in. And then thank goodness. And I remember the transition of where all of our volunteers were on email, but I had like 2 volunteers that didn't have email yet. So we had to mail it to them. And now everyone's on email, but not everybody reads email. So texting's the new way that we have to leverage. So does everyone else are you guys seeing success with texting, or are there any services that you use that make it easy? Anybody using Planning Center? Just tell me what you guys are using to help distribute curriculum in a way that your volunteers are getting it.
Well, we are actually still printing it out and handing it to them. We do that for the whole month for every small group leader. They get everything that they're going to be doing for the month. And then we have a copy of it in their box. So I think I might start utilizing some of the stuff that you guys are talking about, but it does seem to work. They have it all with them. They get it again. And then we post the preview video on our Facebook page. We have a leaders only Facebook page. And then I can send them immediate Facebook messages through that page of like what the big idea is and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're still printing.
We use Planning Center at 12 Stone. We like it. But one thing that we've gotten really intentional about is making sure everyone knows how to download the app, especially with our teens. That's the only thing that they pay attention to is a push notification on their iPhone. And so we've done that a lot, because the thing I like about it is it keeps reminding you if you haven't accepted or declined. And that's helpful for us. You can also look at the whole lesson, and then we attach all of the Bible story videos and the large group activities and the MC scripts. But I think I'm going to probably start doing the video, because that's an amazing idea and something that they would watch a lot more. So I love that.
So we use Planning Center also. We still use that. One of the things that I'm going to start moving towards is using the Remind app for our volunteers. And because we have so many teen volunteers and they're all on the Remind app because of school, notifying them, I think that we feel like moving forward that would be a good tool for everybody to use. And so then, on Sunday morning, I can, hey, everybody up and ready to go? See ya this morning. Hope you're going to be on time.
Somebody just messaged too, and this is actually really good too, I know most of us are probably using some form of group me among our ministries, whether our coaches are using that as well, but that's always, again, as long as it's not like, 100 people on it and it just ends up blowing up your phone or such. But group me has been for about a decade now. It's been such an important tool for many people how to do that. Some people are asking in the chat here, can you track who opened it? And the one thing is, if you do share a video and you post it on like Vimeo or something, you can actually track how many views you've had. And if you use an email like Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever, you can track who opened your emails. But again, email is not a really sufficient way to do that. I have found too, there's a little trick and hack, because we do put a lot of our curriculum up as PDFs on Dropbox. And when you share a Dropbox link, it's kind of clunky, because Dropbox, it takes you to a Dropbox page. And if they're opening it from their phone, it tries to open up the Dropbox app, and it's kind of clunky. And I learned there's a little hack that any Dropbox link, the link is like just a lot of letters and numbers and things like that. And at the very end, there's an equal, and I think it's a number 1 right next to it. And when you click on that link, it tries to open up Dropbox page. But if you change that 1 to a 0, it just is automatic download. So when they click on that link, it automatically downloads it to their phone or to their computer. So a little trick that I learned, a little hack that you can bypass the whole Dropbox trying to take you to their account, and you can do that. But finding ways to share the curriculum that way is, I think, really important. and helpful.
And all his hacks.
I know.
Always got all the hacks.
Always looking for new ways to make life easier. We created, we're still in the early phases. We ripped off Life Church's behind the scenes web page. They have a leader web page, and we created it. I'm not technically supposed to share it because it's got all the curriculum on it. So, but I have made a video that kind of takes a tour of the website to where you can look at it, and I'll post it in the Preschool Ministry Leader Facebook page later today, that video. But we created a website where all of our curriculum from elementary, preschool, eventually when the site's finished and everyone's using it, everything from adult ministry to guest services, but it's like the hub for everything. I say that as there's a sign that says hub right behind me. But it's a hub for everything. And so volunteers, so it's easy. Instead of texting a link to, or like a file to somebody, it's just I can quickly send the link to this week's preschool content. It's got the videos on it. It's got the hand motions on it. It's got all the curriculum, large group, small group. And it's been really helpful. And we can actually track, visits on the webpage. So we can see, it's always funny because like starting on Friday, Saturday night, we see a spike in attendance. And it's always funny because our web IT guy is always like, man, you're getting hits from all over the country. And it's like, well, because a lot of volunteers travel. So they're like on Friday, they're in Minnesota or Hawaii or Florida, and they're all hitting the website looking for the curriculum and such. But yeah, well, let's change directions here because we've been on this for about 30 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about volunteers. And I'm just really curious about this because I've always had, for 20 years doing ministry, I kind of stuck in my ways in how I schedule volunteers. And I know, Emily, you talked about using Planning Center, which I know a lot of people use that to schedule their volunteers and requiring people to, reply like I'm going to be there or whatever. What have you guys, in the years that you've led in preschool, what have you used to organize, schedule volunteers, maybe when you incorporate subs and things like that, in just a way that's the most simple and efficient way? Because I know it can be, I've worked at churches where it was somebody's full-time job or 20, 30 hours a week of just scheduling volunteers, which was always maddening to me that somebody had to spend that much time doing that, where I know you don't have to, utilizing coaches and things like that. But how do you guys organize? Is it Google Docs? Is it Planning Center? Is it spreadsheets? Is it pieces of paper written down? I don't know. How do you guys schedule volunteers in preschool, and what have you seen be successful?
I can speak first. We use a different number of tools to schedule. So first I send out Planning Center, and I've created a master template on Planning Center of where everyone is going. So I have every single room and their age, the people that are normally in those rooms. I have MCs, I have youth because I send youth to different rooms because they technically don't count in my ratio. And so what we do is we ask everyone to serve every single week at the same service because we offer 4 services at my campus. So we say you watch one or attend one and serve one. So I do that and I send them reminders that way. And of course, I've seen even people say in the chat, like people don't answer Planning Center. And that's something I think we're all facing now. I had a coach literally buy Starbucks gift cards and hand them out if people would download the Planning Center app and answer because it's that important. And so after that, I make a Excel sheet for all of my service coordinators that are placing people of the rooms and the people who have accepted. So I go in Saturday night, Sunday morning and say, this person's accepted. So I write their name because they can be counted on for the room that they're in. And then when people walk in, we can fill in names and know what rooms we're opening. So we have it kind of down to a science. I have 2 sheets of those Excel and I have it for each service, the people that I know I can count on. I have the youth in a different column because like I said, we don't put 2 youth in a room. You have to be 17 or older. And we need 2 adults in a room, especially, if you're a 15-year-old, you cannot handle a room of 12 2-year-olds. It just doesn't work. So we're pretty intentional about it, but we're trying to find ways to get better. So it's always a tension to manage, not a problem to solve.
That's good. And a lot of people were saying, in the chat here that they're having trouble getting people to reply on Planning Center. And I guess it's probably one of those things with everything is like, not everybody's on Facebook. So Facebook is not the solution. Not everybody reads email. So it's probably like, it's a combination of multiple things. And I think it comes down probably too of when you're utilizing coaches who are managing a handful of 12, 14, 15 volunteers, then it's their responsibility to get in touch with a handful of people as opposed to a staff person trying to mobilize and get in touch with 120 volunteers or whatnot.
And also, too, if you go up and personally ask people to reply to Planning Center and say, hey, I didn't know you were coming. And I even say, like, hey, if you reply to Planning Center, you get in your favorite room. And if you don't, I have to place you at the last minute. So I go up to people and I'm like, hey, I really need you to respond to Planning Center. It would help me so much. It's kind of awkward and kind of weird, but having that face-to-face conversation where you ask a volunteer and you put what in front of them, the vision of this is why we answer Planning Center. Like, you don't answer Planning Center to help me. You answer Planning Center because we're preparing for children, because we're preparing for God to move on Sunday. And you are so important that I have to have you accounted for. Like, you are a vital role in this ministry. And when you place that in front of people, it's really hard for them to say no. And then they feel awkward from a conversation, so they always answer after that. I've learned.
So there was a season when we attempted to use Planning Center, but it was around the same time that we also started using CCB. And for the majority of our members, we didn't want them having to have a login for Planning Center and a login for CCB, which we called my Westside. So I did use the scheduling in there for a season, but not everybody used it. So I found that I was still using my own Excel spreadsheet to schedule leaders at the time. So it created a lot of extra work for me. And I also felt like it is so important to have weekly leaders, and we've cast that vision over, and we continue to cast that vision over and over again, that really what we tell our leaders is we're expecting you weekly unless we hear otherwise from you. So what we do now, we have a lot of different people that work on staffing for preschool. So we have a Google Excel spreadsheet that those leaders can log into at any time, all at the same time, and it will keep an updated version. So they're plugging in leaders, or actually they're already plugged in. So we'll even do it a couple months at a time where all of our leaders, we just dump them in there, they're weekly. And then if, Shauna tells me that she's not going to be able to be here on November 3rd, I can go to that tab in that week and remove her, highlight her, and then the week before begin to look for subs to plug in. We also have a parent partnership plan that we use where we email and encourage parents to support the ministry by picking a couple Sundays that they'll volunteer. So they email back or fill out a form in CCB that picks out a couple Sundays that they're willing to come in, be on like our flex team. And so there's a spot on the Excel spreadsheet where that's the part that I'm, as the director, personally responsible for, is finding parents to support the ministry. So I'll plug them in, and then the different team leaders and coaches who are working on staffing will grab them and communicate with them the week of. But for me, it was just, I feel like our leaders are already so busy, and there's so many asks that we put on them that I didn't want them to have to approve or agree to anything. Like, you're already agreed. We're expecting you weekly unless I hear from you otherwise. Really, what I want you to do is go read your lesson. So that's kind of how we do it.
That's good. Who else? Anyone else using some form of Excel, Google, Word document that you're managing your schedule and sharing it with coaches or whatnot?
We use CCB as well, and we do use a scheduling tool. It's not perfect, they've gotten better over the years, and they're doing some fixes and updates, but we do use that. And we have people who serve once a week. We have people who serve every other week, and we have people who serve once a month. And so we schedule them on there, and then it emails them, asking them to decline or accept, kind of like Planning Center does. And we've just kind of talked about that over and over and over, and reminded people about how important it is to just accept or decline that. Because if they accept it, it also sends them a reminder email on Thursday that they're ready to serve the following Sunday, that they're scheduled. And then we also post our curriculum on CCB so they can go out and get it there. But we have a meeting a half an hour before each service that we talk about all that stuff with our volunteers. And this is kind of goes back to the curriculum question, but we talk about the bottom line for the morning. We talk about what the stories are, and we talk about all of that, and just give reminders to them in those meetings. And so we talk about things like, hey, we've noticed that a lot of you aren't accepting or declining. It's super important to us that you do that, so we know who's going to be here, and we know who we need subs for. And we do, if they decline, we ask them to text us too, so that we know, because sometimes we don't always see it from online and have to go back and check it. But that's what we use, and it's working pretty good right now. But
I'd love to speak to using coaches to communicate with your volunteers, because I know a lot of us are at larger campuses, or you might be in charge of multiple hours, and the volunteer sheer amount just gets to be so much, especially when it comes to managing who's going to be where and with who, and do you have enough adults versus teenagers and all that stuff. So we really lean heavily into our coaches. Early in the week, well, I'll back up. We have a spreadsheet like you guys have talked about where everybody's plugged in. We ask all of our volunteers to serve weekly, and that's just your commitment. We hit it really hard when they join us. They know they're committing weekly. And of course we say, we know family stuff happens, but if you are at all physically able to be here, we need you to be here because you're committing to these kids and to their families that you're going to have a consistent leader. So we just assume they're going to be here unless we hear otherwise. And then we have the schedule and the spreadsheet. If they let us know, their coaches know that they're not going to, they have a vacation coming up or whatever, we note that on our spreadsheet. We highlight them red so we know that they're not going to be there, and they communicate that with their coaches. But from my end, I'll send a weekly email out like on usually by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. I'll send it to my 12 coaches, and it'll have in there, things that are going on for the weekend, attached to curriculum. Hey, here's some reminders coming up for later in the month. But I have a section at the top that is like my encouragement to them, some vision, that kind of stuff. At the bottom, it says for volunteers. And so it makes it easy for my coaches to just copy that bottom part. They don't even have to rework anything. They just copy it and drop it into their own GroupMe or email or text or all of them, or planning, whatever they're using to communicate to their volunteers, and then their volunteers communicate back. But that helps me so much because they're communicating to their coaches. But the really key part for us has been really engaging in conversations with our volunteers when they don't come. If, asking them to take responsibility for the task that they said that they were going to do. So if we get a no-show, we text them that day. Like their coach is texting them, hey, we really missed you. Your kiddos are missing you. Is everything okay? We just want to check in with you. And making sure that follow-up is really timely, and then making sure that we're asking and recasting that vision all the time, why it's so important that they're there. And we've seen a huge improvement with that, especially with some of our teens who can sometimes forget that they're, going out of town or whatever. When you let them know that we are missing them, it seems like their attendance has gotten to be a lot better.
That's
Ronnie,
awesome.
Ronnie just posted a question. It says, my church only has one service. And Kelly actually talked about this on Nick Blevins' podcast. And we've always had multiple, so it's been easy to do come one, serve one. But Kelly shared kind of how she scheduled when they had just one service. Do you see that? It says, my church only has one service. How would y'all encourage a couple of people to serve most weeks out of the month? Our early childhood area has a monthly rotation for most of our people, but I'm looking for someone to become a main person. Kelly, will you share what you did on Nick's podcast?
Yeah. We tried with our one service, when we were church plant, we had one service to start off with. We tried with one service to do the every other week volunteer thing, and it about drove us crazy trying to manage who was going to be what in rotation, and somebody was out. It was just super confusing. And so for us, one of the things that we moved to doing was we had people serve month on, month off, which seems like a very huge commitment. But because we did have so many people that were so bought into the vision and wanting to be with the kids, they were able to come in and own a whole month of curriculum at a time and know like everything that's going on with it. And so like communication was just a lot easier for that month. We would, and they really had their partner who served the other month, who they were talking with about prayer requests and different things. And so when we moved to 2 services, it was just such a natural sort of split for our 9:30 and 11, because they were sort of already used to serving for a longer amount of time than just week on, week off. And so they were used to that. And then there was such the team that was set up for our 3rd grade small group was just ready to move to 9:30 and 11. And so for us, that worked. We did have somewhat of like a little volunteer coaching service where our pastor would talk to our people just to kind of do a quick devotion for them. We would sing a couple of worship songs and give them any church announcements just so that they wouldn't miss it. And that was really helpful so when they were out for that month, to feel really connected to what was still going on in service.
Yeah, I think even at our church, we have 3 services. And again, it's been a year-long transitioning where most of our volunteers served every other week, or maybe 10%, 20% served once a month. And the transition of moving them to a weekly schedule. And so even today, there's probably maybe 5% to 10% of the volunteers are still on an every other week schedule. But it's one of those things where I know there's a lot of hesitancy toward asking people to make that kind of a commitment serving every week, that it always, like, it's still true to this day. If somebody is going to no-show, a 90% chance it's the every other week volunteer, not the weekly volunteer. And so it's just better. But what I have done is, even in those few cases where I do have somebody who can only be there every other week because of their job or whatever it is, like, I've even taken, like, I can't manage them. Like, I don't have the capacity to manage their schedule. Like, I'm going to be gone. We're camping this weekend. And so I've just taken another every other week volunteer and put them both in the same room and say, you guys are one person. And if one of you is out, you call the other person and have them, like, only let me know if both of you are dead, or like you can't make it, like you're both out of town at the same time. And it's taken all the legwork out of me. And at the beginning of the month, they just let me know, like, hey, here's our schedule for this month. I'm traveling the first part of the month. She's the next part of the month. So here's when we're doing it. And it's just so much easier to manage it. And I just set that expectation, because many of them kind of feel a little bit guilty that they're not weekly. And so when I tell them, like, hey, I'm willing to let you continue to serve in this role, but I need you to be this person. Would you be willing to own your schedule with your partner? And they're always like, oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can totally do that. And they do. And that's been great. And to bounce off another question that Jackie said just a few minutes ago, which is great. If you use CCB, this is great. Erin actually taught me how to do this, which is amazing, with the mail merge feature. And you could do this if you're using MailChimp or Constant Contact or something. But we created a mail merge for every one of our coaches. And then at the beginning of the week, we write the email for them. And then we may under like one section of like, hey, last week, and then we just write a little sentence like, say something unique for your group or whatever like that. And so that way by Wednesday, all of our coaches can log into CCB, and then they can just take like literally 3 minutes to edit their email and then hit send, and it goes to their volunteers. So that way volunteers are getting personal, unique emails from their coaches. And because I think the easier we make it for our coaches, the more likely we're going to have a win in that way.
Yeah, I so agree. Even when you're asking, like when you're trying to find floats, sometimes we'll do the parent. I can't remember who mentioned the parent. Maybe it was you, Erin, talking with parents and having them support the ministry. But even when I'm asking my coaches to reach out to the parents of the kids in their block of rooms, I'll draft the email or the communication that I want them to say. So it doesn't, because nobody wants to be a part of a sinking ship, right? Like we never want to put out to parents like, hey, we're super unprepared and can't take care of your kids, so you should come help. And then they stop bringing their children. So we always, I try really hard to use the right verbiage, like, hey, you get to be a part of this. We're so glad our middle school students are at camp this week. We really need your help. So you can, show these kids that we're for them, whatever, send it out. So even any communication that's going out, even if it's coming from coaches, whether it's for floats, coverage, whatever, announcements, the more that we can take that legwork off the coaches, I think is so huge and creates consistent messaging.
Jackie, I want to ask you about this because I know in elementary, North Point does this so well, and we tried it this last year, and it's a huge win for us that we really challenge our coaches, that they're constantly encouraging their small group leaders to recruit subs from their small group. And we did a campaign last, I think, January, February, and we recruited probably something like 30, 40, 50 new subs from within the group that small group leaders could manage themselves, and then coaches could manage themselves. So when somebody needed a sub, like staff never got asked, because they could manage it themselves. Do you guys do that in your preschool ministry area as well? And can you kind of talk a little bit about how you do that? Because this is like one of the most genius ideas I've heard in years, and it's helping us in such a big way in elementary.
Yeah, we do that as well. So we just pull the list of, our consistent attenders, because we don't want to just pull a parent list and then accidentally ask somebody to serve who's been at our church for 2 weeks or whatever. And so we'll pull the list, and then we'll also cross-reference that first to make sure they're not serving in another area already, which is huge. People get a little territorial of volunteers. And so we want to make sure that we're not doing that. But once we have our list together of our parents, of our average attenders who aren't already invested in another place, I'll shoot those emails out and all the contact information, cell phone numbers, email, everything out to my coaches for their specific rooms. Provide the communication, that we want. Usually this happens around an event or around a holiday, sometime that a bunch of people are going to be out. It's usually when we do our biggest push to try to get parents support. So the people that reply back, when they come in to serve, we go ahead and obviously we get them background checked if they're going to be in the room. So they're already really going through some of the process, and they've had a little mini vision cast already on the front end when we're asking them to come help us out. And what we found is, especially in our larger churches or multi-site where they may have been at one church and then another campus open, so now they're over here, people don't really sometimes know the pathway to get in. And we get to be the first pathway a lot of times because they're bringing their kids to us. So I started realizing a ton of these parents didn't have background checks, which means they weren't serving anywhere and they didn't even know how. So when they came in to help us out, it became just a really easy on ramp for us. Some of them have been like, hey, I would love to do this weekly, and that's amazing. A lot of them, because early childhood years are crazy and kids are sick and they're traveling and they don't really follow the school schedule yet. It's been a great way to get our floats, and our coaches are the people having that communication with them. So I cannot tell you how many times my coaches have said, hey, so-and-so parent came in to volunteer today, and they said that they would be willing to help us out whenever. And so then by the time I'm finding out a volunteer isn't going to be here, the coach is already saying, hey, Sue isn't going to be here, but Jane's going to come in and sub for her, and she already has background check. So I just have to be like, great, work myself out of a job. That's totally fine. So that's been huge for us.
I found it to be amazingly helpful. Like in our elementary, we would have a really great 16, 17-year-old small group leader over a group of first grade kids. And when they send that text out to the parents, say like, hey, I'm here with your kids. Would some of you be willing to be my sub when I'm out of town or I'm at a dance competition? And the parents they're terrible if they don't say yes. And we see such a great response from parents who are willing to step in and do that. And I think it's just because oftentimes, when we ask, because we're on staff, it's easy for people to tune it out. But when our volunteers ask, it's hard to say no to that. Like, you're the one investing in my kid every single week. You're not getting paid for this. And I think that's huge. I think the sub thing, like our preschool volunteer schedule now, a year later, we're almost I think I need 3 more adults, and we're fully staffed, which is great. I'm really excited about that. But every single Sunday, I've got 10, 15 people out. And so it still feels like we're hurting with volunteers, but it's really just because of the sub issue. We haven't begun to deepen the bench for subs yet in preschool. But I think solving that's a huge deal.
I think it's such a win, too, to get parents in the rooms, because even if they don't end up wanting to be a sub, they get to see what we're doing with their kids. They get to see the intentionality, because a lot of times when parents drop off, they're playing, and when they're picking up, they're playing, and they don't get to know a ton of what's going on. So I really think any way you wrap it, it's a win, whether they join the float staff or if they just get that experience.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of setting a good expectation, because when we are making personal invites for people to volunteer and they say no to volunteering, it's their chance of saying yes to becoming a sub or being on the float team or whatever is significantly high. So most people don't like to say no. They're willing to say yes or to compromise. And so if they can say, I just can't do it in my schedule, but would you be willing to do this? More than likely they're going to say yes. And so I think there's an opportunity. Oftentimes we're looking to find volunteers, but we need to also keep that tray open of we're also looking for subs constantly, because oftentimes our subs turn into volunteers. They turn into great volunteers. Anyone else want to add to this around this conversation kind of morphed from scheduling to subs and to other things? Anyone else want to add to this? Sounds like a lull. Well, I tell you what, we kind of ran out of time, so we're not going to talk about child dedication today, but we might have to save that for another conversation. There are a lot of questions, some of them that we didn't get to finalize or to ask. I know some people asked a couple questions and we didn't kind of get to there. So, but we're going to post all this on the Facebook group, Preschool Ministry Leader Facebook group. So we'll send everyone a link to that if you aren't already a member of that Facebook group, and we'll share. I know some people ask for some job descriptions for the supply coordinator and some other things, and we'll assemble that, put that on there. You can continue to ask questions about that. This video is posted there, so you can ask questions there after the fact. And we'd love to help you. I really love this community. It's been hard to find a very specific preschool community around that isn't necessarily specifically curriculum driven, that where we can ask these kinds of questions. How do we? Because I think someone just a second ago asked about about paying coaches and things like that, and I would say no, never pay a coach. Just pay them with gift cards. But we can talk more about those sorts of things. It's really great. But I want to encourage you. This month, we have a great opportunity to continue to develop preschool directors, preschool leaders through You Lead Coaching. Orange created this kind of ecosystem about a year ago of incredible coaching through strategy and through ministry leadership. And actually, Erin English is one of our children's ministry coaches for You Lead, and it's a really great opportunity to be in a cohort with other people who think like you and do what you do, and to be challenged to work on your ministry, not just in your ministry, and to have people alongside you that are coaching you, cheering you on. And I think you can get there at ylcoaching.com. Is that right? Is it .com? ylcoaching.com. And there's links there. We're continuing to promote that. But we're starting up a new 6 months of coaching there. And so it's great. And whether it's for preschool, elementary, student ministry, next gen ministry, we have cohorts that are still adding, and that's registration is going to close at the end of this month. And it's a great opportunity for that. And likewise, I said that Erin and Kelly are launching a redefining preschool ministry course here. It actually starts today, but it's not too late if you want to jump into that. You wouldn't miss really much of anything. It kind of course actually starts next week with the content, but it's actually there. I'm helping them write the curriculum for this, and it's an amazing course on how to take your preschool ministry to where it is. Maybe it doesn't have any coaches, maybe it doesn't have a specific strategy for partnering with parents or these things, and helping walk through what that might look like to create a ministry-driven, leadership-led parent partnering preschool ministry and taking advantage of the opportunities that we have. I tell you what, I'd love to close this with just to pray over you. Having spent the last year in preschool, I'm actually getting ready to hire preschool director, so I'm about to exit out of the front lines. But I have a new appreciation for what all of you do on a weekly basis, because it may be the hardest ministry at the church. Very rewarding, but so hard. And I just want to pray over you guys and think that Erin or Kelly, would you be willing to pray over all of our people here with what they do every week? I just said both of you, one of you. Kelly, you want to pray?
Yeah. Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity, God. We don't take it for granted. Thank you for choosing us to lead in our specific areas of ministry. God, we thank you specifically for preschool. God, what an honor to be able to come alongside these parents who are just having their kids and just starting off on their parenting journey. And God, just help to give us the direction that you want us to go in each of our ministries. Help us to know that we're not alone, that there's a network out there. There's people, there's groups that want to connect with each other. And God, I hope that everybody on this call feels like they can find their tribe, the people that they can go to when they have questions, just even outside of their church. So I know for me this year, that has been so special. And God, we just pray that you multiply everybody's ministries, that you make them fruitful, God. And I pray that these leaders, that they just, they feel your presence, and that they feel so much of the difference that they're making, God. I just pray that you put people in their paths that can help them feel that. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kelly. Well, thank you all for being there. Again, we're continuing the conversation on the Facebook group, Preschool Ministry Leader, and we'll send you an email with that. And panelists, all you guys, thank you. You guys are my heroes. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the ideas already and challenging me with all this. And until next time, we'll reach out and let you know when we'll do this again, and we'll continue to push each other forward and encourage each other along the way. You guys have a great Monday and a great rest of your week.
Well, there you have it. That was an hour-long call. So if you stuck through and listened to that whole thing, congratulations. Hope it was really helpful. In the future, when we do some more of these tribe conversations that are, open to the public, because we're going to do some that are just for Ministry Boost course members. But when we do some that are public like this, you definitely want to jump in, because then you can participate via chat, submitting questions in the Q&A. And who knows, one day we might say, hey, can you be on the panel and be on video with us talking, sharing what you do at your church? As a reminder, if you want to sign up for that Redefining Preschool Ministry course, you want to do that this week, go to ministryboost.org. And if you want to sign up for coaching, part of the children's ministry coaching groups, my group and Erin and Jim's group both launch next month in November. And you can find out more about that at ylcoaching.com. Hope this was helpful. Hope you took some tools and practical things away to use in your ministry this week. And stay tuned. Be subscribed. We got a surprise, interesting, unique episode coming up. We got 2 more like this, one for elementary, one for student ministry. But then there's another episode that's completely different than anything I've ever done before. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. And I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.